Imagine this. You and your buddies are out on a camping trip. The stars are shining, a fire is roaring, marshmallows are roasting, and laughs are being had. When suddenly, the campfire instantly goes out. Shocked and confused, you begin to worry as you feel an otherworldly presence. All of a sudden, you and your friends are blinded by an overwhelming light. Thinking you're about to be abducted by aliens, you prepare to run until the light speaks. You stop and look, and as your eyes adjust, you see a beautiful angel.
Holy smokes!
Before we get started, please leave a like and comment. The eyes are everywhere. Or you can comment whatever you want. I mean, you don't even get the eye reference yet, but you will. Let's get right into it. When one thinks of an angel, they imagine flawless heavenly humanoids with white feathered wings, sparkling white robes, and maybe even a golden halo to symbolize their holy nature. These depictions go all the way back to the Renaissance and even medieval times, where they can be seen in paintings and statues. But what if I were to tell you that those aren't angels? According to the Bible, the only beings that actually have wings are these guys. Before we get into those, we have to understand what an angel is. The word angel comes from the Greek word angelos, which is translated from the Hebrew word malah, meaning messenger. Angels are messengers. They act on behalf of God, delivering messages from heaven to earth. When they appear in the Bible, many of them appear as human, not having any wings. So if they appear as human, then what are these? According to medieval Christian theology, messenger angels make up only a section of a hierarchy consisting of other heavenly beings. There are seraphim, cherubim, and ophanim. These bizarre alien-like creatures are the true definition of otherworldly. Their depictions and their existence have many Christians debating whether or not these beings are literal or symbolic representations. At the top of this theorized hierarchy are the seraphim. These beings get their name from the Hebrew word seraph, which means to burn or burning ones. They have 6 wings, 2 to cover their face, 2 to cover their feet, and 2 to fly with. In the biblical book of Isaiah, the seraphim are above the throne of God, eternally proclaiming his glory. Many believe the book of Revelation adds to their physical description, as it mentions beings with 6 wings and additional eyes that cover them all around and within. Next on our list are the cherubim. Ah, cherubs. Those adorable little babies that fly around all day, creating enough love and mischief to make Cupid proud. Yeah, those aren't cherubs. These are cherubs. They're first mentioned in the book of Genesis as beings who were assigned to protect the Garden of Eden after the fall of man. Not much is said about them until the book of Ezekiel. Written between 592 and 570 BC, the book contains descriptions of these cherubs. According to Ezekiel, the man who wrote this book and supposedly witnessed them in a vision, they're described as beings that have 4 wings, 2 to cover their body and 2 to fly with. Here's a more detailed description according to Ezekiel. Their faces looked like this. Each of the 4 had the face of a human being, and on the right side each had the face of a lion, on the left the face of an ox. Each also had the face of an eagle. Such were their faces. They each had 2 wings, spreading out upward, each wing touching that of the creature on either side, and each had 2 other wings covering its body. But the cherubim weren't the only beings that Ezekiel witnessed in his vision. They were accompanied by, how do I put this? Wheels. This brings us to what many perceive as one of the strangest beings described in the Bible. The whirling wheels, also known as the ophanim. Now where do I start with these? The ophanim are described as wheels within wheels. These wheels are rotating inside one another, and the rims are covered in eyes. Here's Ezekiel's description, and I quote, "As I looked at the living creatures, I saw a wheel on the ground beside each creature with its 4 faces. This was the appearance and structure of the wheels. They sparkled like topaz, and all 4 looked alike. Each appeared to be made like a wheel intersecting a wheel. As they moved, they would go in any one of the 4 directions the creatures faced. The wheels did not change direction as the creatures went. Their rims were high and awesome, and all 4 rims were full of eyes all around. Now, as I said before, many Christians do debate whether these beings were written to be symbols or if they're actual beings in biblical lore. Many non-Christians have even speculated that these depictions are of aliens, and I can see why they would think that. Wheels within wheels? It sounds like some type of spacecraft that would be far beyond early man's comprehension. Well, there you have it, folks. Angels. Well, technically only the messengers are considered angels, and they don't even have wings, and the ones that do are covered in eyes and have 4 faces, and then there's the wheels, and...
Imagine this. It's Halloween night. The moon is full, tricks are being given, and treats are being eaten. Because you're an adult, you didn't trick or treat, and you weren't invited to any parties. So instead you decide to call your friends over for some Halloween fun. One friend brings his Ouija board. With nothing better to do, you and your friends attempt to contact the other side. The only problem? You were successful. Demons. Those unholy spirits straight from the depths of hell, ready to torture you for all of eternity. What if I were to tell you that demons aren't hell's maintenance staff? According to the Bible, demons were once angels. But before we get into that, we have to understand where the idea of demons comes from. The concepts of spirits, whether good or bad, is a universal one shared by many cultures. In regards to the word demon, it is derived from the Greek word daimon. What's interesting about this Greek root is that the word daimon does not carry any negative connotations, unlike the word demon. It simply indicates a spiritual being. It wasn't until much later during the rise of the church that the term evolved and branched out into Christianity, to which the term was associated with malevolent spirits. But the question still stands. According to Christian faith, were demons once angels? And if so, what happened? The Bible states in the book of Revelation that Satan, once an angel himself, envied the glory of God. Because angels were created with free will, he was able to convince many of them to join his heavenly rebellion. Long story short, it didn't go well. Here's what the Bible says about the failed rebellion. The book of Revelation says, and I quote, "Then there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon and his angels. And the dragon lost the battle, and he and his angels were forced out of heaven. The great dragon and the ancient serpent called the devil, or Satan, the one deceiving the whole world, was thrown down to the earth with all of his angels." Unlike the angels and the other heavenly beings, demons have no physical description in the Bible. Though their physical appearances aren't described, their negative abilities and influences on other beings have been. The most well-known ability being possession. Throughout history, the idea of spirit taking control of a living being has been incorporated in legend, faiths, and media. According to the Christian faith, the notable account of demonic possession is written in the Bible. According to the book of Mark, Jesus encountered a demon-possessed man. Verses 1 through 20 says the following of this account, and I quote, "When Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an impure spirit came from the tombs to meet him. This man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain, for he had often been chained hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day, among the tombs and in the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell to his knees in front of him. He shouted at the top of his voice, 'What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me.' For Jesus had said to him, 'Come out of this man, you impure spirit.' Then Jesus asked him, 'What is your name?' 'My name is Legion,' he replied, 'for we are many.' And he begged Jesus again and again not to send him out of the area. Demonic possession affects an individual not only on the spiritual level, but also on a physical and mental level as well. The passage states that the man was bound in chains, hand and foot, yet he was able to shatter them. The passage also implies that demonic possession caused him to harm himself using stones to cut his skin. To make things worse, this man was possessed not by one, not two, but a legion of demons. You may be wondering how many are in a legion. According to historians, a legion consists of 4,000 to 6,000 men. That's a lot of demons in one man, whether you believe in demons or not. The idea of these malevolent beings can send chills down your spine, and they're certainly not something we would want to run into.
Monsters. Big ferocious beasts with sharp teeth, plenty of horns, living on the land, up in the air, or deep below the sea. The Bible describes many creatures that seem like something out of Tolkien. You know, The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, that kind of stuff. I'll just stop myself there before I'm accused of committing blasphemy, but it's true. Descriptions of what seem like monsters are found all over the Bible. Revelation chapter 13 says, "Then I saw a beast come out of the sea with 10 horns and 7 heads, and on its horns were 10 diadems." Diadems are like crowns. "And on its heads blasphemous names. The beast I saw was like a leopard, but it had feet like a bear's, and its mouth was like the mouth of a lion." Thank you to Francesco Vecchioni for suggesting the topic of today's video. Before we get started, please like and comment.
Hold on to your butts.
The Book of Job, the story of a God-fearing man who had everything, only to have all of it taken away by Satan. The story does have a happy ending, as God restores all that was taken from Job, and then some, for remaining faithful to him. What does this have to do with monsters? In this story, God speaks to Job, and during this dialogue, he describes 2 creatures, the behemoth and the Leviathan. Let's start with the behemoth. Here's the biblical description. "Look at behemoth, which I made along with you, and which feeds on grass like an ox. What strength it has in its loins, what power in the muscles of its belly. Its tail sways like a cedar, the sinews of its thighs are close knit, its bones are tubes of bronze, its limbs rods of iron. It ranks among the works of God, yet its makers can approach it with his sword. The hills bring it their produce, and all the wild animals play nearby. Under the lotus plants it lies, hidden among the reeds in the marsh. The lotuses conceal it in their shadow. The poplars by the stream surround it. A raging river does not alarm it. It is secure, though the Jordan should surge against its mouth." This description has led many to believe that God is describing a hippo, an animal that feeds on grass like an ox, hidden among the reeds in the marsh. Hippos like to stay in the water. Their skin tends to dry quickly if they're out of the water for too long, so this description also makes sense. Other interpretations have linked these descriptions to the elephant, as the name behemoth implies a creature of large size. Now here's where it gets interesting. Creationists, those people who think that the world is 6,000 years old, they believe that the behemoth was not a hippo or an elephant, but instead a dinosaur, a sauropod to be exact. Those long-necked dinosaurs. Why? Their main argument is in verse 17. Its tail sways like a cedar. Now here's a picture of a cedar tree. Here's the tail of a hippo, the tail of an elephant, and lastly, the tail of a sauropod. Which one do you think would most likely sway like a cedar? The only problem with this interpretation is that dinosaurs have been extinct for millions of years. If this were true, it would imply that man lived amongst dinosaurs, or that this behemoth was one of the last of its kind. Either way, it's an interesting interpretation. Moving on to the Leviathan, it's described in the book of Job, verse 12, "I will not fail to speak of the Leviathan's limbs, its strength and its graceful form. Who can strip off its outer coat? Who can penetrate its double coat of armor? Who dares open the doors of its mouth, ringed about with fearsome teeth?" These next descriptions are a little more intense. Verses 18 says, "Its snorting throws out flashes of light. Its eyes are like the rays of dawn. Flames stream from its mouth. Sparks of fire shoot out. Smoke pours from its nostrils as from a boiling pot over burning reeds. Its breath sets coals ablaze, and flames dart from its mouth." Many assume that this is a crocodile, but the last time I checked, crocodiles don't breathe fire. Another variable that debunks this crocodile theory is this verse in the following chapter. "He makes the deep boil like a pot. He makes the sea like a pot of ointment. He leaves a shining wake behind him. One would think the deep had white hair." Now, what could this mean? If any of you have been on a ship or even a small boat, you'll notice that as the boat is sailing, it leaves behind a white foamy trail. For a foamy trail to be left behind, something massive would have to be piercing through the water. But how many crocodiles have you seen disturbing the water enough to make it boil like a pot? So maybe this was a prehistoric creature. Not likely. How? Because the Hebrew translation of the word Leviathan is Leviathan, And Leviathan is derived from the root LYW, which I will not pronounce, which means twist or coil. What's the most well-known scaly animal that can twist or coil? Snakes. So if the Leviathan was real, it would have to be some type of sea serpent. It would also have to be a creature that can breathe fire. Now there are creatures that can spit burning substances. Take the bombardier beetle, for example. It has the ability to squirt enemies with burning chemicals. Or a better example, spitting cobras that spit venom. But clearly, this isn't a creature that spits acid. As it says, its breath sets coals ablaze and flames dart from its mouth. I don't know about you, but this is either a metaphoric creature or it's truly something we have yet to discover in the animal kingdom. But whether you believe in that stuff or not, it seems pretty far-fetched to classify this thing as a simple crocodile. Well, there you have it, folks. Bible monsters. What do you think these creatures are? Were they once living, breathing titans that roamed the earth? Or maybe symbolic creatures with a deeper meaning? Personally, I think it'd be way cooler if these were actual mega animals than a hippo or a crocodile. A world compared to the likes of a fiery furnace. A place of punishment and eternal destruction. A land of weeping and gnashing of teeth. Where torment, like smoke, rises forever and ever, leaving the condemned to endure unimaginable pain and humiliation without rest, day and night, for all eternity. This terrible place is known by many names. We call it Hell. According to the Bible, the afterlife is comprised of two places, heaven and hell. The Bible states that at the end of days there will be a final judgment where every human will stand before God and give account for all that they've done. A book of life will be opened, and those whose names are not written within it will be cast into what the Bible calls a lake of fire, this lake of fire being hell. The word hell is often found in the New Testament, and though we generally associate it with the realm of eternal torment, that's not always the case. The Bible has gone through so many translations and iterations that it's easy for a word like hell to be misused, or at least misunderstood. For the many times hell is mentioned, the word hell itself isn't actually referring to hell, the place. It's often the case that hell is a translation for the Greek word Gehenna, which itself is the Greek translation for the Hebrew word Hinnom. Now Hinnom, or Gehenna, whichever you prefer, is a valley south of Jerusalem dubbed the Valley of Slaughter, and for good reason. During the reign of Israel's King Solomon, children were regularly burned alive in the valley as sacrifices to Moloch, an Ammonite god. During the Babylonian invasion of Israel, the valley was then used as a place to dispose mounds of bodies. Eventually, Gehenna was converted into a garbage dump. To this day, it continues to hold a reputation of death, fire, and filth. This is exactly the reason the word Gehenna is translated to hell. Based on the history of this valley, it's literally been hell on earth. Our perception of a place where the devil rules and demons punish the condemned is largely due to pop culture and other forms of media. One of the most popular depictions of hell comes from the Divine Comedy. Written in 1320 by Dante Alighieri, this poem is divided into three sections: Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso. But of the three, Inferno is by far the most imaginative. It follows the story of Dante, a man who descends through the 9 circles of hell to search for his lover. Each circle is assigned a sin and a punishment to go with it, categorized from bad to worse the further you descend. The first is Limbo. Being the tamest of the 9 circles, it is described as being similar to Earth. Here you'll find those who were never baptized living in sorrow due to their separation from God. The second circle is Lust. The souls trapped in this circle are tossed around in a powerful windstorm that smashes them against rocks. This is followed by Gluttony. Those who overindulged are pelted by hail and rain while they lie in an icy black slush. Greed. Those who hoarded or spent lavishly are pitted against one another by rolling heavy boulders back and forth. Wrath. Here you'll find the most foul-tempered people sloshing around the river Styx, engaged in eternal fighting while the sullen soak below. Heresy. Those who spoke against God or the doctrine will find themselves trapped in flaming tombs. Violence. This seventh circle of hell is divided into 3 rings. The first ring punishes those who were against their neighbor. Murderers, warmongers, tyrants, those who delighted in bloodshed are ironically boiled in blood. The second is for those who were against themselves. Anyone who committed suicide or attempted it is punished by being transformed into gnarled, thorny trees, only to be torn apart by harpies. During this transformation, the souls remain conscious, feel pain, and are only allowed to speak when they bleed. The third ring is reserved for those who were against God, art, and nature. Blasphemers, sodomites, usurers, they're all forced to dwell in a desert of blazing sand while fire rains down on them. The next circle of hell is fraud. Here you'll find seducers, flatterers, hypocrites, imposters, counterfeiters. Anyone in the business of deception is subjected to whippings, head twistings, mutilation, and even drowning in poop. And those are just a few of them. The ninth and final circle of hell is reserved for treachery. In a frozen lake, traitors of all backgrounds are imprisoned in ice. A stark contrast from the fiery hellscape people tend to imagine. Depending on the severity of their treachery, some are frozen waist deep, while others are completely encased in ice. Here the devil is frozen at the center of a lake, described as having 3 faces, 2 of which are gnarling on Brutus and Cassius, the men who orchestrated the assassination of Julius Caesar, while the third face gnarls on the head of Judas Iscariot, the disciple notoriously known for betraying Jesus. Dante's Inferno paints a colorful picture of hell, but like many popular portrayals of biblical elements, this representation is not entirely accurate. One of the most common misconceptions is that the devil and his demons rule hell. But as an old friend put it in a previous video, they're not hell's maintenance staff. The Bible states that hell was specifically created for them, not to govern it, but to suffer in it as prisoners. The second misconception is that hell has tiers like Dante's Inferno, but the Bible doesn't support this. Sinners aren't categorized by sins, nor are they assigned to a punishment that fits their crime. In hell, everyone is equal. The torment is shared. It's widely believed that hell is a land of inescapable fire, and there are plenty of Bible verses to support this. Other descriptions include sounds, smells, and sensations that would agonize its inhabitants. The term fire and brimstone is often used, brimstone being an older word used to reference sulfur, an element known for its rotten egg scent. So if you want to know what hell smells like, it probably reeks of burning flesh and rotten egg. But sulfur plays an even bigger role than its foul stench. The Bible describes hell as a place of darkness. Now, is that figurative to emphasize how terrible this place is? Or could it possibly be a genuine description? Remember, this is a place of fire and brimstone being sulfur, which is highly flammable, and when it burns, its flames are blue. Not to mention the fact that blue flames are generally considered hotter than red flames or orange flames. These images of molten sulfur are the closest thing to our reality that can visually represent hell, a blue inferno. Well, there you have it, friends. Hell. Whether you believe in it or not, we can all agree on one thing. If hell is real, it's not a place you want to be. Imagine this. Numbers. We add them, subtract them, multiply and divide. But numbers are more than devices for keeping count. They are symbols with their own meanings. For example, to be number 1 means to be the best of the best. But sometimes, number 1 is used to reference a more common bodily process. Then you have the number 420, the number that comes after 419, or a code for a special plant in its recreational applications. How about the number 13? Many consider it to be incredibly unlucky. In fact, many buildings even lack a 13th floor, or at least label it as the 14th floor. It's almost always the case that elevator panels lack a 13th floor button, and some believe that it's bad luck to get married on the 13th day of the month. Speaking of days, Friday the 13th, another example of numerical superstition. You see, we've always used numbers in this fashion, especially in religious texts. In the Bible, There is one number that's held a sinister reputation for centuries. Some have called it the devil's number, and many Christians avoid mentioning it on a he who shall not be named basis. The number is 666. Considered by many to be a three-digit demon of its own, Westerners tend to avoid the number, with one famous instance being the renaming of U.S. Route 666. Once dubbed the Devil's Highway, it was renamed to the more mundane Route 491. Another famous example is when former President Ronald Reagan had the address of his Bel Air home changed from 666 to 668. But how did this number come to be feared and even taboo among certain circles? Well, it all began in the book of Revelation, the final book of the Bible which describes the end of days, a time of war and disaster the likes of which our world has never seen. Amongst the chaos described in the verses is a creature who rises from the sea. This creature is known as the Beast or AntiChrist, a malevolent figure whose persona is symbolized by a monster with 10 horns and many heads. The Beast is granted authority over the earth, and over the course of 42 months it slanders God and wages war against his people. But how is the Beast linked to 666? Like many passages in the Bible, the story of the Beast leaves more questions than answers, the greatest mystery being that of the Beast's identity. Who is he? Who was he? Or who will he be? In order to identify this Antichrist, many theologians, people who study the Christian religion, have relied on clues left within the Bible, the most important clue being found in Revelation chapter 13, verse 18. It says, "This calls for wisdom. Let the person who has insight calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. That number is 666. But in this context, how does the number correspond to a man, let alone the beast of Revelation? One of the working theories is that 666 is more than a number. It's a name. Decode the number, and you'll have the name of the Antichrist. This is based on the ancient practices of gematria and isopsephy, both of which assign a numerical value to letters, names, words, and phrases. Some believe that the letters of the beast's name will add to 666. Many theorists have attempted to plug in the names of popular figures such as serving politicians, as well as history's greatest monsters, with no success, all except for one. A man worthy of the title Antichrist, Roman Emperor Nero. Known for his many atrocities, including the persecution of Christians, it's believed by some that Nero is the beast of Revelation. It's important to note that this book was written in Greek. Now, the Greek version of Nero's Caesar is Neron Kaiser. With the Greek name converted into Hebrew, the values of the letters add up to a sum of 666. Interestingly enough, not every New Testament manuscript lists the beast number as 666. There are some ancient copies that list it as 616. So which is it? Previously, we used the Greek spelling, but if you take the Latin spelling of Nero's name, and if you convert that spelling into Hebrew, well, wouldn't you know it, the values add up to 616. Both of them work. It's theorized that 666 and 616 are only slight variants of one another, a confusing product of both Greek and Latin, though the Greek 666 is far more common in ancient manuscripts. Further justification for the Nero theory is based on Revelation chapter 13, verse 17, a verse which describes that those under the leadership of the beast would not be able to buy or sell unless they carried the mark which bared his number or name. Given the historical context of the time, it would only make sense for the author of Revelation to use secret numbers in order to condemn his persecutors. Only a man with a death wish would call the emperor a beast, unless he did it in code. Though there are some problems with the Nero theory. For one, many believe Revelation was written decades after his death, although rumors circle throughout the empire that Nero was in fact alive and would one day return. Given his reputation, the paranoia was understandable. Another problem with the Nero theory is that the use of gematria is unreliable, as there are many names that could add up to 666. It's regarded as too convenient, as you can get any number if you're constantly respelling or retranslating the name to get your desired result. Some hold the idea that 666 is purely symbolic, in a stark contrast with 777, another number regarded by some to symbolize God's perfection. It's the idea that 6 is one less than 7 and thus falls short of the glory of God. At the end of the day, we're all all free to believe whatever we want. For some, the number is prophecy. For others, it's history. But we can all agree that as of today, 666 will continue to remain a mystery. And no, I didn't intend for that to rhyme. Thank you guys for watching. This has been Jonathan from Imagine This.